Good afternoon. Welcome to 38 TV. This is Paul Vizard with Business Network Television. It's a segment that we have on our channel at 38 TV. And today we've got a great guest. It's Drew Robbins. Now, Drew started Three Pillars Health about 6 years ago with his wife, Marcia. And I'm Marcia. And this is something that is dear to your heart because you're supposed to be dead.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, tell us about it.
I had an expiration date of 2018, Paul. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I had a spinal cord injury in 2010 that actually had me heading toward a wheelchair. And
wow.
I was in constant pain, lots of medications. Then, oddly enough, within 6 months, I was diagnosed with advanced arthritis. And so I used to walk with two canes. You knew me back then.
Absolutely.
And I got to the point where I couldn't grip canes. My hands were that bad. And I remember going to the doctor after I had a rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis and saying, I do not have rheumatoid arthritis. I can't believe after the spinal cord injury, being healthy my whole life or seemingly healthy, that now I have this debilitating disease. And so this doctor did 2 additional tests to prove to me that I had rheumatoid arthritis. And all of them came back strong positives. And I started downhill at that point. And that's really what led Marcia and I to create Three Pillar Health. Because I didn't want to expire in 2018. And I was very seriously contemplating what can we do, and so was she. And so we started studying literature, and we found something called functional medicine. I don't know how many people have heard of it, but let me explain it this way. You have 2 types of medicine, really. You have acute care medicine, which all doctors in the United States are trained in. And this is the best in the world, the best in the history of the world. If you have a burst spleen or you have something that could kill you imminently, nothing better than the U.S. acute care system. But there's also functional medicine, which is looking at metabolic health. Metabolic health is different. Metabolic health is chronic inflammatory disease. It's actually 80% of all of our healthcare spending in the United States is metabolic disease, called metabolic syndrome. And that can take the form of diabetes, heart disease, even cancer, hypertension, and just many, many diseases. But it actually is 80% of what kills Americans as well. So for us, we found that functional medicine really taught a core set of principles of not how to give a pill to cover a symptom, or to cut something out, or to burn something out, or to give a therapy that you could take for the rest of your life. It actually looked for what is the core cause of the problem.
Right. Yeah, because taking a pill for something isn't curing the problem. It's kind of like Lysol in your trash can.
Yeah.
It's full of trash. It's still going to stink after a minute.
That's exactly right. And my trash can was really pretty stinky.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was, I was quite sick. I mean, I took pain meds around the clock. I took medicine to knock me out at night because the pain was so bad from my thoracic spinal cord.
Yeah, you can't sleep.
Yeah, and from the rheumatoid arthritis. And I would go into flares about every 6 weeks. And flares are very debilitating in that disease. So as we studied and we learned, really what's most important is the most intimate thing that we do, which is eat. It's what we put at the end of our fork, not what's at the bottom of a pill bottle.
Sure.
And therefore, we started investigating that, and we started really doing deep dives into the medical science. And so we created something that we used, that I used primarily. Marcia used as well. She had a number of autoimmune conditions. But for me, it actually reversed the issues I had. I was able to see the pain disappear. I now, one of the things that needs to be said is if you talk to a rheumatologist and you say, can you cure rheumatoid arthritis? And they'll say, no, you will take it, you'll have this disease the rest of your life until you die. And the treatment for it is immunosuppressant drugs. And the problem with immunosuppressant drugs is right in the name. It suppresses your immune system.
They're telling you right up front.
That's right. And this is why I was given 2018 expiration date because that was 8 years or 7 years before 2018. And so the average male lives about 7 years past a rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. So now I'm 9 years past. I'm doing incredibly well. There's nothing I can't do.
You're taller.
Yeah, better looking too.
I don't know about that.
I look a lot better not holding two canes everywhere I go.
For sure.
And I do enjoy an incredible quality of life. My life is pain-free, and that's huge. And I don't know how many people who are almost 60 who can say that. I do multiple HIIT classes every week, and I am able to do the exercise I want. I'm able to go. We have a 3-story home. I go up and down and up and down. I don't have issues, and my health metabolically. So what we know is there's been some great studies that have shown the metabolic health of Americans. And we know that only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy. And there are a very strict set of criteria for what determines that. And 88% are unhealthy, 12% are healthy. I'm in the 12%. I used to be part of the 88%. Anyone out there needs to really consider where they stand. We actually put on our website the metabolic health checklist, so they can check that out and see how they score. But the real important thing to think about is the fact that we all have a certain time on this earth, and we want to be as in control and as healthy as possible from the start all the way through to the end. But that's not the American condition. The American condition is when you get past 40 or 50, you start heading downhill. That makes no sense. It doesn't have to be that way. We can live in control of our lives and our health up until the very end. And I think that's a strong message.
Well, there's obviously a reason why, if you look around the world, for example, folks that are living, say, some of the longevity, if you will, that in places like Tibet and actually around glaciers, because of the minerals and all the things that are involved there, it's obviously it's creeping through into the diet and in their water drinking. There's a clue there, don't you think?
Yeah, there's a lot that we do wrong in the United States in pursuit of efficiency or low cost or just convenience. We end up eating the wrong things all the time. And if you...
At the drive-through a lot of times.
And you know, it's not necessarily that's a problem.
No, it has its place. It's just like, if you do it every day, there's going to be consequences for that.
Yeah, that's where I was going. We do it too often. And you can occasionally, you have to understand what you should eat. You have to understand what is important to your body, what is nourishment and what is an anti-nutrient. I would say at the average fast food restaurant, 95% of that food is an anti-nutrient. It is not something that's going to give you nutrition. And that's one of the things we spend a lot of time doing for ourselves, is understanding this and then teaching our clients, this is how you should eat.
So you brought a good point there. You're teaching your clients. So you actually have courses, and you can see behind us there, it's almost... So it's Fit Your Way, FYW30A.com. So we would encourage folks to go visit that and get a little bit of education on what you guys do. And it's really an interesting thing, but it's kind of led into what you were telling us off camera, in that you want to be in the best situation you can be health-wise because of things like COVID that are coming along. And a lot of people are not really handling it super well just because of some of the aspects of prior health that, is going to hurt a lot more than somebody that's a little bit more healthy. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. A little bit about what I do. My normal day for the last 6 years is spent 2 to 3 hours every morning studying medical literature, studying and understanding what the science is.
I know you're a data guy.
Yeah, I do like data. I have, my early in my life, I was a Intel analyst, U.S. Army, and they teach a certain way to think, and that way to think is to clear out all the debris and to think very clearly about what is the data in front of you, and to look what does it mean, not what do you want it to mean or what do you think it should mean. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. And back in March, I saw just what I thought was horrible science. I started seeing people who I respected saying things that I didn't respect because they didn't make sense from a scientific point of view. And so we dove in, and I switched from being focused purely on metabolic health studies to being focused on cell biology, immunology, and virology. And there is great science out there, and a lot of it contradicts and informs where we are today. And back in March, I wrote a paper predicting where we would be today, and we're there. And I'm not saying I'm Nostradamus. I'm just able to read data and not have a political or ideological spin on it. But when it comes to how we approach things, we take a very significantly individualistic view. And in terms of things like health and how it impacts your vulnerability to COVID-19, it's essential. In New York, I have some good figures on that. Almost 87% of everybody who died had more than 2 metabolic issues. And these are things like diabetes, hypertension. I talked about those before, but it was very common. Those would be some of the top 2. And if we look today, that still holds true, even to a larger percentage. Now, I track the studies, and I know what comorbidities or those are additional diseases you may have, which cause the worst damage. And it is, I have a list here, my cheat sheet: hypertension, diabetes, hyperlipidemia, which means your fat cells fill up, you create a lot of fat, a lot of triglycerides, coronary artery disease, renal disease, dementia, COPD, cancer, atrial fibrillation, and heart failure. All sound pretty serious to have as a comorbidity.
Absolutely.
So
that brings up the statement that seems to be thrown out there sometimes is somebody has died from COVID versus with.
Exactly. And I have just completed a study, I'm hoping to publish in the next couple days, where I looked at, as of last Friday, Walton County had 18 COVID-related deaths.
Just to clarify, we're sorry to interrupt you. We're in Walton County, Florida. So just so we know, obviously Florida's had quite a highlight on the state as a whole and how it's handled everything. So just wanted to make sure if people knew where we were, if they're not watching in there's Walton County, Georgia. That's why I said that.
Oh, okay. Well, bottom line is we are, from everything I can tell from the data, pretty much COVID-free. We are not a COVID hotspot. I track every day what's showing behind us, called the COVID facts for Walton County. And I track this for 3-Pillar Health. And we look at all of the data available in various databases from the government and from some private entities. And we do a lot of analytics. I mean, you'll see it behind us. And basically, in terms of where we are versus where we were, I mean, at some point, we probably a month ago, 6 weeks ago, we had about 20% positives in testing.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled to see that. And you might think, why would anybody be happy to see all these positives? Because I understand that a positive doesn't mean a death.
Right.
A positive and a death, or a positive and a symptomatic outcome, is vastly far
Big
removed.
difference.
Exactly. Sure. Right now, where we are is we've been averaging 4 or 5, less than 10% positives out of all of our tests. But even better than that, if you really want to understand what's going on, you have to look at a couple factors. You have to look at ICU. So how many new people do you have going into ICU for COVID? You have to look at deaths. And positives really are pretty meaningless until you get to the end of what's called the burnout phase for a virus. And then positives tend to go down. But until then, we have a lot of positives, because here's the truth. Viruses do what viruses do. Viruses infect virtually everybody. The differential is not, are you infected or not? The differential is, how does your body respond to the infection? And if we look deep enough in this community, we'll probably find a vast percentage, more than have been tested, are positive for coronavirus. But what's important to understand is that coronavirus might have occurred when they were 5 years old, as a result of a corona-based cold. A lot of people don't understand coronavirus has been around forever.
Yeah, there's a reason why it's 19.
Yeah, well,
They keep
novel.
adding numbers to it.
Yeah, and basically, if we do know that 20% of all colds are caused by coronavirus. Now, if you look statistically, if you've had more than 5 colds in your life, you have probably had coronavirus-based cold. So your body has taken in, your immune system has identified that. And it has the ability, your immune system, a specific part called the T cell system, to recognize a past infection, to then tell the body, get rid of this, destroy this cell because it's infected. And we have a wonderful, incredible immune system. And that's why, we have a disease here that 99% of people are not going to be killed by. We're basically 1% of people at the maximum, and approximately that of the infected. But when you look at the overall population, I track our overall population here, specifically in Walton County. Our population death rate is 0.024%. So 24 thousandths of a percent is our death rate. We have 74,000 people. We have had 18 deaths. Now, I've done the forensics view on these deaths because it's not enough for somebody to put on a death certificate COVID-19 because that could mean they tested positive, but they were run over by a bus. That really is not a COVID death. So I have been successful in obtaining from the medical examiner all of the forensics investigative files, and they're pretty thick. There's a lot of data here.
Yeah, you've got a stack there. If you want to hold it up, people can see it.
Yeah, but it gives you the detail that you need to understand not just a very discrete bit of information, but really how it happened and what happened, what led up to death. And I have gone through these, and I found of the 18 reported deaths, we have 3 that I would identify as being of COVID-19, that they directly related to it. And the rest are with. They were positive, and it may have contributed because, these people, I'm just going to hold this chart up.
Sure thing.
I know you can't see it, but this shows all the comorbidities for the people who died. Some of these people have 8 and 9 comorbidities. Some of these people are end-stage COPD. The average person put into a nursing home, their average lifespan is 5 months. People don't realize that. It's very sad statistic. So I would like to say that these deaths that occurred, if COVID had a lot of impact, it was to move up their death date. It did not particularly cause the death, but if they died in April, maybe they would have died in June. So that's sad, they lost a few months. But we have to look at this clearly because we have a panicked population.
Yeah, so many people are very, very scared, and I think in some cases rightly so, but based on what they've been told.
Right.
And I think it doesn't seem like this is one of the reasons why we're filming this is kind of to look at, let's not be necessarily as afraid as being made out, just because of simple data that you're going through and showing that especially in this area, and obviously other areas are different, and but this area in particular is, and we're grateful for it, not considered a hot spot.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely not. And when I go to a local store and I see all these people in masks, and I see a child in a mask, it breaks my heart. Because what I do know, and I don't mean this in a judging fashion, I know 2 things about that person. I know that they're fearful, and I know they're compliant. And these are scary things in American citizens to me. And I am afraid they also don't understand the science, because they are doing much more harm to themselves wearing that mask than they ever could do in protecting themselves or others from COVID-19. The masking systems, even the N95 respirator, are not sufficient. Otherwise, if you looked at a virology lab, you'd see a bunch of people walking around in surgical masks.
For sure.
Or N95 respirators. You don't. They are covered head to toe. We do nothing to cover the mucous membranes of the eye. We do nothing to wear gloves so that when we touch our mask and and later touch our lips or our eyes, that we transfer whatever pathogen was there into our bodies. That and the reduction in the amount of oxygen, but mainly the increase in the CO2 that you consume, is really bad. We actually did a test, and what we did was we took a CO2 meter and an N95 respirator, which are supposed to be the creme de la creme, the best, and we shoved that little tester up into the mask, and within 1 minute, the subject had gone to 10,000 parts per million. And everybody says, well, I don't know what that means. Well, let me tell you what it means. The normal atmosphere, we have 250 to 350 parts per million CO2. Mm-hmm. The studies show that over 1,000 parts per million, you start having cognitive decline, and your decision-making skills also go down. So with this, a further measure, the OSHA only will allow you to work in less than 4,000 parts per million. Mm-hmm. So if you put on a respirator and you go to 10,000, you maintain that 10,000 parts per million, you're putting yourself in serious jeopardy. Mm-hmm. Now, it may make sense for certain types of retailers to have people have cognitive decline and inability to make a good decision, but I don't think we want to shop in those places. Yeah. So I do worry. I worry greatly about people wearing masks, and I want to tell you, take your masks off. Masks do not make sense, especially in Walton County. You know, I polled some of we have expected deaths, excess deaths, expected deaths, and we track this from a research perspective, and epidemiologists keep this data. In Walton County, you have a better chance of being in a motor vehicle crash by a factor of 5.5 times. You have a better chance of being in a homicide than dying of COVID-19. Diabetes is 5 times more prevalent. I mean, the death from diabetes, don't even get me started on heart disease and cancer, that it's just massively different. My fear is that we have created an atmosphere where people are being told to do something, it's the wrong something. Mm-hmm. And they're allowing themselves to believe it because people in lab coats say to do it, or people on TV say to do it. They should not. They should learn for themselves.
Trust the science.
Well, that's it. But most people don't know the science, and the people who are spouting science are not really spouting science. They're spouting a lot of opinion.
Well, they've also changed it since the beginning of this as well. So, you know, I think if you come up with a statement that says, okay, everybody should do this because it's the best thing to do, mm-hmm. and then you change and move those goalposts 2 months later, then it's like, well, you told me to do this. And in fact, I think Florida governors, you know, everybody stay home. And now it's go outside, and now actually staying home in a closed space with the air conditioner on is supposed to be a higher risk. Well, you told us to stay home, so like, which is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great point. It's a great point, and the thing is, if it's so important to you that you're willing to discard your civil liberties, you're willing to wear a mask, you're willing to social distance, you're willing to have a loved one die and not be able to go to their funeral. I mean, think of how serious these things are that we're allowing to have happen. And that is basically 1%, less than 1% of total deaths. But you have these other things that produce 80% of deaths. So we have 7,500 people in the United States die every day. That's our number, 7,500. China, I think, has 28,000 per day. Mm-hmm. So 7,500 in the United States, 6,000 of those people die of metabolic illnesses. Mm-hmm. Here's the secret. Metabolic illness is resolvable and fixable. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can make significant progress in 30 days. You can totally turn it around in 90 to 120 days. I mean, how long have we been locked down? How long have people been willing to do things that are really quite ridiculous from a science perspective?
Pretty severe.
Yeah, but yet they can resolve the issues that kill 6,000 of 7,500 Americans, not 1% of 7,500 Americans. And this is just important. It's like, sometimes I think we have to step out and we have to take a long, hard look at what we're doing and understand what it actually means, and not just go along to get along.
Yeah, no, I'm a big believer in questioning everything. And when you scratch your head and say, this doesn't seem right, not passing the smell test as I scratch my nose, uh, then you know what's wrong with doing that? I think it's okay to hold people accountable for, you know, you say this is supposed to be fact. Well, okay, let's check your facts here, and if it holds up, then it holds up. And what's wrong with that? I never understood that. Why people just go, oh, you're going against that, and you're completely wrong. It's like, well, not necessarily.
I have spent time to try to understand that because I had the same conundrum in thought. And I'll tell you, and I think most people who are watching this will be able to identify. Once somebody starts speaking in medicalese, your brain turns off. You know, once it gets to a point where you're like, wow, I wish I had napped through biochemistry. You know, when those things start happening, you trust whoever it is saying that to you in authority. That's a psychological process that occurs. It's natural. And the problem is, I know a lot of physicians, and some of them know what they're talking about, but to be completely honest, when it comes to this, some of them don't, especially when it goes into the metabolic health side. Many of them don't because they were never taught about nutrition. They have maybe 1 to 2 hours of lecture in all of medical school. Well, I get that in before I have my third cup of coffee in the morning. And yes, I drink a lot of coffee, love coffee. But, so what you're saying is exactly right. I think people are basically, they feel overwhelmed by the data, and they see what everybody else is doing, and people they trust are telling them to do, so they do that thing. But you owe it to yourself to dive down. I spend every day researching, but then I take very complex concepts and I try to make them understandable. So I publish a lot on medium.com. I publish a lot on Facebook. I take my Medium posts or articles and studies and I link to those. And I also write a lot. I put things out on Facebook to try to help people understand complex things. So I also get tons of questions. I mean, I get questions. I was getting questions last night, 10 o'clock at night, you know, and I try to answer them as best I can because I think people deserve to know, because they're not just making decisions for themselves. They're making decisions for their families.
Yeah.
They might have young children. They might have a spouse.
Parents,
absolutely. And they have to have knowledge.
In the risk group.
Exactly, yeah. And so you got to understand what is risky and what is not.
Right.
And I don't think our media has done a hill of beans of positive when it comes to that, because unfortunately, you know, I remember in the 70s, and earlier, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, still
right?
does.
Yeah, now it's you
How
know,
many
if it
cases?
scares, if it panics, it leads. Yeah. And when I hear cases and people are up in arms and upset about how many new cases there are, I'm horrified because cases are good. That's how we move to something called herd immunity, which we in Walton County, we have community immunity. I would argue that with any statistician.
Well, think how many people
doctor.
come here and visit.
Yeah, well, millions,
you know,
right?
Average of 4 million a year during the summer months, and you know, obviously over the year. But you know, that's a lot of people. And if there was a lot of infections going on, if they were bringing it with and infecting the locals and then leaving, our caseload would be a lot higher, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I pulled this up just to look at it because I'll just give you some numbers. We've had 13,389 tests in Walton County. Of that, we've had 1,593 positives. Of that, we've had 3 people die of COVID-19. And we've had 15 people die with COVID-19. But we've had 11,796 of the 13,389 as negative. And I just have to say, you know, I hate to just constantly throw hand grenades in everybody's happy pot, but the testing that we do is kind of ridiculous. The testing is certainly not accurate. Our antibody testing, our PCR testing. PCR is a technique that was never meant for diagnostics. It was meant to verify a diagnosis. And PCR testing is a qualitative test, not a quantitative. So it will say, hey, we see something that is a remnant of that viral RNA or a protein from that virus. But what it won't tell you is it active? Is it COVID-19? Is it a past coronavirus? It will not tell you that because they share something like 60% of the same protein base between the coronavirus that causes a cold and COVID-19.
Yeah,
so how can you know?
saying it's there, but is it attacking your body?
So if they really wanted to do something important, there is a what's called a T-cell CD4 test that actually looks at the main part of the T-cell system that tells you if you actually have a sensitivity or an infection to the coronavirus, COVID-19. But nobody's doing that. It takes about 4 days now, but that's without being optimized. So I question when people get worked up about being a positive or being a negative, because the tests, the antibody test can be 35-40% wrong as well. So with those kinds of odds, I mean, I wouldn't, if I thought getting in my car, I had a 35 to 40% chance of making it to my destination, I'd get a new car. Yeah. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, for sure. This is a lot of information, and thank you for putting a lot of this stuff together, because I think it's, again, important for at least to have that reference point to work from, and for this, I think the people that are afraid out there to not necessarily be as afraid, or at least have the data in front of you in a readable form, to where you can evaluate your risks as to where where you go next, and how you conduct your day-to-day activities. Yeah. But staying in the house, I don't think is necessarily a self-lockdown type situation is always the benefit.
If you really want to protect yourself, take care of your metabolic health. People who are metabolically healthy do not have bad outcomes from this. I don't know of one case that I've looked at anywhere, and I've looked at a lot of cases, and not just here, all over, where there wasn't a metabolic syndrome-based chronic inflammatory disease. At least one, minimum one, usually a lot more. And if you want to make yourself protected from this, protected from other viral outbreaks in the future, protected from even influenza, basically a way to optimize your immune system, get your metabolic health in order. Take care of it. And that's what we do. We help people do that. And we do that over something called our 3-pillar program. And we actually have regular, multiple times a year, we do a free metabolic seminar, and we record those. So if you want to see it, just let us know, and we'll publish that out there so you can see it. But what we do is we introduce people to methods they can use to improve their metabolic health. At the same time, we introduce them to, well, here's what we do over a 12-week course to take you from where you are, metabolically unhealthy, to metabolically healthy. And we have weekly classes. We meet twice per month with each individual student and client, and we actually really tear into everything from their medical testing through how they feel, which is really the most important indicator I find. I always ask that question: how do you feel today?
For sure. So what would be your most common, because I know everybody's an individual, but what's the most common thing that you come across whenever you're trying to adjust the metabolic health of someone?
I would say high blood pressure, which is hypertension. And I would say 75% of the people come in our doors they have problems with insulin sensitivity, which is another name for diabetes. Many people think that diabetes is something that eventually you get, all right? And it's called adult onset diabetes. That's what type 2 diabetes is. And basically, it's really not true. And the reason it's not true, and I won't go through all the metabolic reasons, but it takes 10 to 20 years to diagnose somebody as being a full-fledged diabetic, where they were actually a diabetic 10 and 20 years ago. And we've become quite good at identifying that in people through how they look, as well as looking at their blood work, looking at their endocrine panels, as well as their insulin and their glucose and a few other things. And basically, if you can identify that early, you can put off a whole bunch of other problems. But even if you don't, every one of our diabetics, full-fledged diabetics, their doctors took them off the diabetic rolls within 6 weeks.
Yeah, well, that's significant.
People do not think diabetes can be healed. We watch it over and over. I don't want to say it can be healed. It can be put into remission, though, and we've done it 100% of the time.
Well, who wants to end up with the meter on them and having to take your blood every, whatever they do, I don't know. hour or something.
They do it in the morning. They do it in the It depends on how aggressive their diabetes is. And plus the way we treat diabetes is backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much you know about diabetes, but what do? We tell people, well, it's a problem. We don't have enough insulin. So we give them more insulin. They inject.
Yeah.
It's not the problem.
Yeah.
It is not the problem. The problem is...
The drug manufacturers not going to tell you that, are they?
Absolutely. The problem is that every cell in your body has these little things called mitochondria, and that mitochondria is something that actually produces the energy for your cells. And what is actually happening is your mitochondria is getting deaf to the insulin. It doesn't see it, so it doesn't reach out into your blood and pull glucose in. So the doctors, it's kind of like if you're going deaf, they say, well, just turn up the music a little louder, and turn up a little louder, and turn up a little louder. Now, I don't want to say all doctors, because I am seeing more and more doctors who actually are understanding how to repair this in a permanent way, which is what we do. And instead of doing the music, we take away the problem. And the problem is that their insulin is responding usually because they eat way too many carbohydrates, way too much corn syrup, and that's in virtually everything, and things that cause their insulin to secrete. So we take that away, and we move it way down. And then what we find over time is their mitochondria and all their cells settle down, become resensitive, and now they can live more of a normalized life with a lot more knowledge.
Yeah, if you read the average box and when you go in the grocery store, you'll see two big things on there: salt and sugar.
That's right. That's right. Well, there are 256 names for sugar.
Well, there is that too. They're going to disguise it too. So
absolutely,
the real cause of sugar. So this is fascinating stuff. And if we can put up your graphic there for your website, I think that would be a great idea to go to Fit Your Way, which is FYW38.com.
Yeah.
And Drew, it's been a pleasure. We could talk for hours on this, but we're kind of out of time. But maybe we'll do some more shows, and we want to hear more of this data. And I think it's important to look at this thing in a perspective, and everybody stay healthy and metabolically healthy too. How about that?
Sounds great. Thank you.
For more videos like this, go to 38.tv, and you can download our apps at the App Store. We're on Roku, Amazon, and a whole bunch more places. You can watch us live 24/7 at 38.tv, and check out, we have 10 other channels that we broadcast at 38.tv. Great stuff. See you next time. Thanks so much.
Bye.